How long have you been an emergency room physician?
I've been an emergency department physician since 1987, so that is over 30 years.
How long have you been?
She has been an emergency room physician since I have been alive. That's a long time.
A forensic pathologist.
I've been a forensic pathologist for about 31 years.
So you've been an emergency room physician and a fellowship trained forensic pathologist, both of those for 30 plus years.
Correct.
Do you have a medical license?
Yes.
When were you first licensed to practice medicine?
In 1988 in California.
And what licenses do you currently hold?
I hold medical licenses in California, New York, Idaho, Massachusetts.
And in California, what are you technically licensed? What is the documentation of the license you had? Your license as a what?
Physician and surgeon in California.
A physician and surgeon, did you say?
Correct.
And as a side note, I was in Boston yesterday helping with a mutual aid effort and outreach effort with a few of my peers, including Sabrina Salvati, as I mentioned in a previous video. And I kept seeing Boston police vehicles, and I kept thinking about John O'Keefe because he was a Boston police officer. And I envisioned him driving one of those Boston PD SUVs in Boston, just doing his job. And then I also thought of Dr. Marie Russell, because Dr. Marie Russell was also a Boston police officer for some time. And then she went on to become a surgeon and a physician, and at a forensic level, at a fellowship level, graduating with honors. I have a lot of respect for this woman. She climbed to the top. It wasn't enough for her to be in law enforcement. She wanted to keep challenging herself. I have a lot of respect for her just as an individual.
Your Honor, as I'm sure you know, but I want to make sure I get your protocol correctly. We've pre-marked, Mr. Brennan and I have agreed to the exhibits. We've agreed to both the pre-marking and to the admissibility of each exhibit. And I can never either tell you how I understand I'm to go, or Your Honor can state it.
So these are in evidence?
Yes.
So use them as if they're in evidence.
Thank you. Appreciate that. May I approach the
Yes.
witness? Thank you. Dr. Russell, I have handed you, which is in evidence as Exhibit 1. Do you recognize Exhibit 1?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize it?
Because I wrote it.
And what is Exhibit 1?
This is my curriculum vitae.
And is that your updated curriculum vitae?
Yes, it is.
It's the most recent one.
Yes.
I now want to get into your educational background with a little bit of sprinkling of experience going into it. Where did you go to college?
I went to college at MIT and Northeastern University.
Approximately when did you attend Massachusetts Institution of Technology?
From 1972 to 1974.
And what did you study at MIT?
I took pre-med courses.
Did you obtain a degree from MIT?
No.
Why not?
Because my mother got sick. She developed cancer, and I went back to New York.
And after that experience, did you go back to college?
Yes.
Where did you go?
Northeastern University.
And what years did you attend Northeastern University?
Part-time from 1974 to 1981.
And did you obtain a degree from Northeastern University?
Yes.
And what degree was that?
That was a Bachelor of Science degree with highest honors.
After college, did you go on to receive a Doctor of Medicine?
Yes,
Where?
at the University of Massachusetts in Worcester,
When?
1987.
Now let's go into residencies, internships, and fellowships. Did you complete any residencies?
Yes.
What residencies did you complete?
I completed a residency in emergency medicine, followed by a residency in anatomic pathology.
What is anatomic pathology?
Anatomic pathology is the study. It's a division of pathology. It's a subset of pathology, and it's a division that deals with diseases that can be diagnosed by looking at tissues and bodily fluids.
And what is emergency medicine? Although most all of us have that experience, could you just briefly describe what emergency medicine is?
Well, emergency medicine is the field of medicine that deals with acute injuries and injuries of people.
In terms of the residencies, briefly describe what was involved. What did you do in those residencies? And now let's start out with emergency medicine.
Emergency medicine was a very intense residency. It was a combined internship and residency that lasted for 4 years, and I was at one of the busiest trauma centers in the United States. We would routinely see patients in the emergency room, and some months we rotated outside the emergency room to various subspecialty clinics and areas like the ICU, for instance. In the emergency medicine department, we worked all different shifts. We saw numerous patients because it was a very busy facility, and we saw anything that ranged from gunshot wounds, stab wounds, beatings, down to runny noses.
And where was specifically those residencies? What facility? What is the name of it?
It was at the Los Angeles County USC Medical Center, which people formerly knew as the General Hospital, the 19-story General Hospital from Los Angeles.
And did that have a certain level designation with regard to the type of trauma that would come to those facilities?
Yes, it's a level 1 trauma center, which is the highest level that can be achieved.
And in terms of the residencies, in terms of anatomic pathology, where was that residency? Which facility?
That was at the same facility.
And how many years was the residency of anatomic pathology?
That was 2 years.
And how many years for emergency medicine?
Combined with the internship, it was 4 years.
Did you complete any fellowships?
Yes.
What fellowships?
I completed a fellowship in forensic pathology.
What is a fellowship compared to, say, an internship and a residency?
Generally, it's a higher level. A fellowship is completed or done or undertaken after someone completes a residency.
What did you do in your fellowship?
Oh, in forensic pathology?
Yes.
Did autopsies. So it was a very organized training program, which included 1 to 2 autopsies a day, mostly 2, and as well as lectures, seminars, interesting case conferences.
So to reiterate, she was performing 1 to 2, and she said mostly 2 autopsies a day.
Many things. During that time, I was sent to the FBI for a specific case series. So it was very intense. And in terms of the autopsies, I autopsied cases that were gunshot wounds, stab wounds, many homicides, many homicides, accident victims, car accidents, people hit by cars, people stabbed, child abuse, a wide range. And the goal was to give the fellows the widest range of experiences.
And can you estimate how many autopsies you performed during your fellowship?
Oh, I know for a fact that I performed over 500.
And that was over a 2-year period?
Correct.
So you're performing then an autopsy almost every other day, is that
Oh, no,
correct?
1 to 2 autopsies a day.
1 to 2 a day.
Yes.
And what at its core are you doing in terms of an autopsy as a forensic pathologist?
You know, the autopsy is just part of what the forensic pathologist does, which is death investigation. So a forensic pathologist looks at a person's, well, just the body is one part of it. The external exam, sometimes, some cases, not all cases get an autopsy actually that go to the medical examiner's office. But there's a death investigation which involves a detailed external examination plus an examination of the circumstances of how the decedent was found. Interviews with police officers and others when appropriate, interviews with their doctors, and examination photos if available.
Earlier in your testimony, you said you have over 30 years of experience as a forensic pathologist. When was the last time you engaged in the practice of medicine pertaining to forensic pathology?
This year.
And have you had...
And it right there, guys, it throws the motion the Commonwealth provided, the prosecution provided for this very Daubert hearing, where Hank Brennan alleged that Dr. Marie Russell hadn't performed anything related to forensics in 20 years, I believe he said. He alleged it in his motion, and here she is, like, I'm still doing it. I just did it this year. So this is a long-standing forensic expert right here, guys. And she has studied bodies. You know, she has studied autopsies. She's performed autopsies, and some of those autopsies were car accidents. You know, like, she could tell us herself if John O'Keefe was hit by a car. And notice that not once during the initial trial did Dr. Marie Russell let anybody know that John O'Keefe was hit by a vehicle. Not once did she say that he was hit by a vehicle, and she would know if he was hit by a vehicle.
Had a continuous or non-continuous practice in forensic pathology?
Continuous.
And we're going to get to...
And you know, Attorney Alessi is brilliant for asking these specific, thorough questions. He is excellent. He is a very matter-of-fact attorney. You'll notice he's got this level of professionalism that very few attorneys have. And as much as I love Alan Jackson, not even Alan Jackson has the consistency and candor that Attorney Alessi has. I love Alan Jackson. He's like a rock star attorney, but Attorney Alessi has this consistent matter-of-fact way about him that pulls you in. It's like you're listening to a professor who cares about his job and really wants you to learn. He's an excellent attorney.
That later on as appropriate. Not as appropriate. We're going to get to it later on. Do you have any affiliations with professional organizations?
Yes.
Can you name them?
Yes, I am a fellow of the American Academy of Forensic Science.
What do you need to do to become a fellow of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences?
You have to be a member for a certain number of years, a minimum number of years, and attend a certain number of their annual meetings. And it helps if you've given presentations at the annual meetings.
What other professional organizations are you a member of?
I'm also a member of the National Association of Medical Examiners.
Are you a member or a fellow?
I'm actually a fellow.
What do you need to do to be a fellow of the National Association of Medical Examiners?
It's very similar. Be a member for a certain number of years, and they usually ask that you've given at least one presentation.
What other professional organizations are you a member of?
Yeah. Okay, so I've been a former member of the American Academy of Emergency Physicians, a former fellow, actually. I'm a member of the California Homicide Investigators Association, the California Sexual Assault Investigators Association.
Now let's move to trainings. Do you have any specialized trainings?
Lots of specialized training.
Please name them.
I love that she chuckles. She chuckles. And I've also picked up on this, like, I have to do this all over again kind of energy from Dr. Russell. But again, she's testified as an expert witness for other cases in her time. So I can imagine she's forced to be patient and restrained, you know, and just kind of carry herself through this in a professional manner, even though she's likely had to do this a lot.
Okay. Well, I have specialized training in both emergency medicine related fields and forensic pathology related fields. Would you like me to name both?
Well, maybe eventually, but I'm going to try to shorten this a little bit. Give me an example of the type of investigations, apropos to why we're here today, that you would have had specialized trainings for.
Well, I attended a 2-week program in crime scene investigation. I've attended and completed programs in forensic photography, bomb investigation, hit and run accident investigation as well.
Dr. Russell, if you need to access your report, do it, but I would prefer that unless you need to, we just have a question and answer.
So I can't see whether Dr. Russell's reading from
I
can't see. Do you have your CV in front of you?
I do.
All right, so what's typical, counsel, is it will remain closed. If she needs to refer to it, you just ask, and of course I'll let her refer.
That's what I understood, yes.
So is that, you have it open in front of you?
It's right here.
Okay, so counsel, why don't you?
I will.
Why don't you leave it there turned over, Dr. Russell?
Oh, okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Your
I
Honor.
can't see from up here whether she was reading or not.
I had that sense, that's why I mentioned it.
I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Do you have any specialized...
The camera like zoomed in so close to her eyes. And I just want to say, like, in that moment, as Judge Bev walked closer to Marie Russell, I felt bad for Marie Russell because, like, I would not want to be that close to Judge Bev. I would not want her walking close to me. I'm so taken aback by Judge Beverly Cannoni's energy, her unchanging energy. The only way in which it has changed is it has worsened over time.
Training beyond your experience as emergency room physician or forensic pathology in motor vehicle accident investigation?
Yes.
Describe that, please.
Yes, I took a several-day course here in Massachusetts on hit and run accident investigation.
And we're going to get into this a little bit more, but did you also have experience with motor vehicle accident diagnosis and treatment of humans in the emergency room?
Oh, yes.
And it's good that Attorney Alessi asked this specific question, but if you've been paying attention, Dr. Marie Russell already stated that she's had experience with autopsies pertaining to accidents and that she underwent training pertaining to hit and run accidents. But again, it's Attorney Alessi being a thorough attorney and making sure he's not leaving anything unturned, because again, in the prosecution's motion for this Daubert hearing, to throw Dr. Marie Russell's statements out of the equation. They remember the prosecution does not want Dr. Russell to testify at the retrial. So, and they made a bunch of allegations in their motion. And again, one of those allegations was that she hasn't been practicing for 20 years as a forensic expert. Just a complete and total lie. Not only can she tell us whether or not John O'Keefe was hit by a vehicle, she can also tell us what his wounds really were. In her experience, she can tell us what his wounds likely were from.
Get into more of that detail. As a forensic pathologist for 30 plus years, did you see decedents and living patients who had been the subject of motor vehicle accidents?
Many.
And in terms of forensic pathology, are patients always deceased, or does the field of forensic pathology also address living persons?
Yes, the field of forensic pathology as a broad field, yes, can deal with living people. Some government offices will choose to restrict their involvement to deceased people only. But it's a broad field. It does involve living people too.
Now let's move to expert witness experience in courtrooms. You understand what I mean by the terminology expert witness?
Yes.
What jurisdictions have you testified in as an expert witness?
Well, California, Florida, Illinois, Arizona, and the state of Washington.
What topics in that expert testimony did you testify to?
Both emergency medicine and forensic pathology.
So you testified as an expert witness in those cases in both emergency medicine and forensic pathology.
Correct.
And you were qualified as an expert in each one of those categories, correct?
Yes.
Was your opinion ever excluded, your expert witness opinion ever excluded in any of those court cases?
Never.
It's like just, it's not it's not surprising to anyone following this case that the prosecution just once again is wasting everyone's time with their motion for a Daubert hearing. It's so clear that Dr. Marie Russell is more than qualified to fulfill the role as an expert witness in a trial. She has several times before for other cases. On top of all of her experience as a doctor, as a physician, as a surgeon, and her experience as a forensic pathologist, as an emergency room doctor and a forensic pathologist. Like, she is above what is needed for this case. She, it's a waste of time, but at the same time, guys, the prosecution is given the prosecution in their motion has given the world another opportunity to hear Dr. Marie Russell and how qualified she actually is. It's like the prosecution is wasting everyone's time, but their motion also backfired on them, because this is just more proof that Dr. Russell is qualified. She is an expert witness.
In terms of assessing and treating dog-inflicted human wounds, do you invoke differential diagnosis?
Yes.
And could you describe how do you invoke the concept of differential diagnosis with respect to assessing and treating dog-inflicted human wounds?
With any wound that I see, and with any condition that I see in the emergency department, I usually get an impression, what I think it is, but it's important to think of what it what else it could be. So you don't focus in on your diagnosis right away or your first impression, because sometimes it's not accurate.
You know, the Canton Police Department would benefit a lot by listening to what Dr. Russell just said. You don't go off of first impressions, you actually conduct an investigation. Yeah.
And so it's very important to have what we call in medicine a differential diagnosis. This is what I think it is, but this is what it could be, and why isn't it this second thing or third thing?
The host would like you to unmute your microphone. You can press star 6. You are unmuted.
Should I wait, Your Honor?
No, I think you're all set. All set, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
May I continue, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. How important or unimportant is the application of differential diagnosis with respect to pattern wound recognition regarding dog bites on humans?
It's important in a lot of conditions, including pattern wounds and dog bites, because you need to know, or at least I as a physician need to know what it is. What it is I'm going to be looking, what is it that I'm looking at, and what is it that I'm going to be treating? And I need to make sure that I'm not treating the wrong condition.
Let's now go to the topic of the materials you have considered in this matter. Without stating what it is, have you been able to form an opinion as to the source and nature of the wounds that were inflicted on the decedent?
Yes.
What materials did you consider in forming your opinion?
Well, I looked at the appearance of the wounds, and with my training and experience, I took that all into consideration. I did do a differential diagnosis on what those wounds could be. You know, could they be caused by an assault? Could they be caused by a motor vehicle? Could it be caused by, self-inflicted? I went through that whole differential before I came to my conclusion.
Did you look at any photographs of the decedent from Good Samaritan Hospital?
Yes.
Did you look at the autopsy report of the decedent?
Yes.
Did you look at the grand jury testimony of Dr. Scordi-Bello?
Yes.
Did you look at the trial testimony of Dr. Scordi-Bello?
Yes.
Did you look at autopsy photographs of the decedent?
Yes.
Did you look at the photographs that were taken by the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab?
Yes.
Did those photos include a sweatshirt or what's sometimes referred to a hoodie?
Yes.
And were there photos of that sweatshirt or hoodie that you looked at?
Yes.
Did you look at a letter from Tracy Kennedy with the town of Canton with a report regarding a German Shepherd owned by Brian Albert?
Yes.
Did you look at the photographs of dog bites and a certificate of vaccination for Brian Albert's former German Shepherd dog?
Yes.
Did you look at the forensic DNA testing report by the UC Davis Veterinary Genetics Laboratory?
Yes.
Did you look at the UC Davis Veterinary Genetic Laboratory case report?
Yes.
Did you look at a report from a Paul Mikowski, a licensed private investigator, on interviews regarding Brian Albert's German Shepherd dog?
Yes.
Do you have an opinion with regard to the nature and source of the wounds on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm.
Yes.
What is that opinion?
Those wounds were inflicted by a dog attack.
Brilliant and succinct. Attorney Alessi went through all the documents she reviewed, Dr. Russell reviewed. And again, this is just thorough, and it's pleasantly thorough. It's what is needed to combat against the deceptive prosecution in this case. She went through every single document she needed to go through, and she observed the photographs herself to make the determination that John O'Keefe was in fact attacked by a dog. And more than likely, that dog was Brian Albert's dog at 34 Fairview. So again, just the prosecution made so many crazy allegations in their motion, and this hearing is the product of the prosecution's motion, and yet it has given the world an opportunity to hear just how thorough the investigation was for Dr. Marie Russell. She looked at everything she needed to look at in order to make the determination that, in fact, those are dog bite and claw marks.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
How did you form that opinion?
Well, I utilized my many years of training experience with wounds in general and dog bites in specific, and went over the materials quite a few times. And with that, and plus read up on some literature that I had read in the past and reread again. And that's how I came to the opinion.
Now, to get a little bit more specific, did you invoke your pattern recognition methodology in coming to that opinion? Objection.
You have to ask it differently.
Thank you, Your Honor. Did you employ a methodology in coming to that opinion?
Yes.
What was the methodology, or one of the methodologies, in coming to that opinion?
Well, right away, it was apparent that there was a pattern. So I used the pattern recognition methodology, plus my many years of training experience to come to this conclusion.
And with regard to the pattern recognition, do you have a level of certainty with regard to the pattern that you have recognized in the decedent's wounds on his right arm?
Yes.
What is that level of certainty or certitude?
Those wounds are highly characteristic of a dog attack.
How frequent in your experience do you find in wound care that a wound pattern is highly characteristic of a certain source? I object to a percentage type question.
Can you answer that question, Doctor?
I'm not sure I even understand it.
So ask it differently.
Thank you.
I will say that for a while, Attorney Alessi was on a roll with the questions, and now his questions are getting a little more elaborate and a little more difficult to answer succinctly. So I'm just saying that the prosecution keeps objecting, but I kind of agree with the prosecution. The questions Attorney Alessi is asking need to be a bit more succinct.
When you use the phrase highly characteristic, what do you mean by that phrase?
Well, it's very high. If I were to give a percentage,
Please continue.
I would say almost pathognomonic, 90, very high 90s.
Now let's go to differential diagnosis. Did you perform a differential diagnosis in coming to your opinion?
Yes.
What other considerations did you take into account as to possible other causes of the injuries to the right arm of the decedent?
Well, given the pattern, there were certain things that came to mind right away that I had to rule out, and so I ruled out self-inflicted as an etiology. I don't think he self-inflicted those. The pattern was not characteristic of being struck by a motor vehicle. The pattern was not characteristic of those wounds in particular on the arm of being inflicted by another person.
So just to highlight that the defense has thus far, during the first trial and during this hearing, the defense has demonstrated by 4 different experts between ARCA and the medical examiners in this case on the defense side. The defense has provided testimony by 4 different experts that John O'Keefe was not struck by a vehicle. His injuries do not correlate with being struck by a vehicle.
You mentioned motor vehicle accident, and earlier in your testimony, you spoke to your experience with observing and treating a lot of motor vehicle accidents. Why did you rule out motor vehicle accident as a potential cause of the injuries to Mr. O'Keefe's right arm?
Because he was found outdoors.
And what other reasons? Was there anything about the nature of what was presented in what you reviewed with regard to his injuries that caused you to rule out motor vehicle accident?
I think I misunderstood the previous question.
So, yeah.
Yes. So.
Let me start over.
Yes.
Because I am going to take what you said. So let me ask it this way. What caused you to rule out a motor vehicle accident as a cause of the injuries to Mr. O'Keefe's right arm?
There were several reasons I ruled it out very quickly. One is that the wounds were not characteristic of anything that I could attribute to a motor vehicle, a certain part of the motor vehicle, the underneath part of the motor vehicle. They were just not characteristic of any particular part of the motor vehicle. Secondly, there were no bruises from the neck down on his body. There was a mark on the hand, which I think I have an explanation for that.
Please.
Which was not a motor vehicle, but I didn't see any bruises or fractures or other blunt injuries that were characteristic of a person being struck by a motor vehicle.
And there have been opinions relayed online that the bruising on John O'Keefe's hands were likely from John O'Keefe defending his face when he was being pummeled, when he was being punched. He likely at some point used his hands to block the punches.
And if I can add to that?
Please.
We, at the coroner's office forensic pathology program, was specifically trained on how to recognize not only, if someone was struck by a vehicle, but to even recognize further about what types of vehicles would inflict, what types of wounds, and the locations that we should look for on the body for wounds for someone that's struck by a motor vehicle.
I will make a part 2, and part 2 will include the photographs that Dr. Marie Russell relied on in order to make her determinations. Thank you for watching.